Meanwhile, Commerce Secretary Wilbur Ross says the US will fight harder to protect its exporters. Joining us is Michael McKee, Bloomberg's international economics and policy correspondent. Michael, is it fair to say that in spite of what the administration says, that it wants to do lots of trade with lots and lots of different partners?
Well, that's also something that they say. We don't know exactly how they feel about it. Obviously, they don't want to not do trade. It's good for the economy. But whether they have a way to do it correctly is certainly open to debate. The administration in a very lonely position compared with the thinking of most mainstream economists. Wilbur Ross today suggesting that the troops are on their way. Gives the world the impression that the U.S. might be readying for a trade war. He said the rest of the world's been picking on the U.S. for quite some time. But it is Steve Mnuchin's comments that are obviously getting traders' attention today, because it's been a very long time since the U.S. actively wished that its currency were weaker. And I brought along a chart that shows what happened when they did. #BTV 5174, when Lloyd Bentsen was Treasury Secretary in the early days of the Clinton administration. He said the yen should be stronger, the dollar should be weaker, and you can see what happened. The dollar weakened, and the trade deficit with Japan, remember these were in the days when everybody was afraid of Japan, not China, the trade deficit widened considerably. So Bob Rubin came along with his statement that a strong dollar is in the U.S. national interest. Both of those things turned around, and that's been the de facto policy of the U.S. Treasury Department ever since.
Is it a coordinated response on the part of Mnuchin and Ross, or is it not coordinated? Because what I don't get is, if we're going to negotiate better trade deals, why would we also need a weaker dollar?
Well, in theory, you don't, but the weaker dollar does have the effect of making U.S. goods cheaper overseas. So what Mnuchin is saying is true. Whether it should be policy is another question. The other thing that happens when you get a weaker dollar is you can import more inflation. Now, better to be lucky than good. He's saying this at a time when we don't have a lot of inflation. So it may not be as much of a danger as it was back in the days when Lloyd Bentsen was talking about it. It also means that if inflation is higher, central banks have to raise, the Fed would have to raise interest rates more quickly, and that's not happening. So right now, we'll see if this represents a real change in policy or not.
Mike, thanks a lot. Bloomberg's Mike McKee, Bloomberg's international economics and policy correspondent. Let's chat about today's currencies in more detail. We're joined by Richard Jones, FX and rate strategist.